This is the best Android phone I have used yet. Okay, it's only my second Android phone, but still. Hello guys, how are you? David the Franco here from davidthefranco.com, and welcome to my review of the LG V10. Now I gotta start out by saying this. This phone has honestly been blowing my mind. If only for the incredible cameras. Not only are the front-facing cameras pretty damn impressive, but the rear-facing camera, truly remarkable. Just like the LG G4, which doesn't surprise me all that much because with LG phones, I've come to expect outstanding cameras. And this one, it simply does not disappoint. So starting out with my review, let's talk about some specs. The LG V10 features a beautiful 5.7-inch display with an awesome resolution of 2560 by 1440. So in other words, this is indeed a Quad HD display. It also features a multifunctional secondary display that can be used for shortcuts and notifications. I'll talk about that more in a bit. Okay, so as I just mentioned, the LG V10 features some incredible cameras. The rear camera is 16 megapixels, and the dual front-facing cameras are each 5 megapixels. Yes, dual front-facing cameras. I'll talk about that in a second. This phone does shoot 4K video, and it even captures audio using 3 microphones, which is pretty cool. It also features a 3000 milliamp hour battery, which yes, is removable. That means if you want to switch batteries throughout the day, you can do just that. And finally, the LG V10 features expandable storage of up to 2 terabytes via the onboard micro SD card slot. 2 terabytes. We are so lucky to be alive. So going into this review, I just want to make something very clear. There's a lot of stuff to talk about in regards to smartphones because not everybody uses their phone the same. I mean, some people may use their phone as a phone. Shocking, I know. But for someone like myself, this is strictly on Wi-Fi, so I've primarily been using it as a camera. It's 2 o'clock. You know what, Mr. McIntosh? I'm gonna have to mute you. No offense. So just keep that in mind. It's impossible to go over every single feature of this phone. But of course, with that said, you can always find more information using the link right below to LG's website. Okay, so continuing forward, I do want to mention the in-between moments that LG seems to be heavily focusing on in their marketing and advertising. This includes features such as 3-mic audio recording, quick video editor, snap video, steady record, and finally, manual video mode. Now these features are very neat and definitely worth exploring, but again, I'm not going to go into detail. I'm just going to count on you to go to LG's website for more information. So for this review, I'm going to talk about my favorite features, the features that in my opinion stood out the most and that could maybe convince you to go from a previous LG phone to the V10. But with that said, this phone is not dramatically different from the LG G4, and it may not be worth upgrading right now. But anyway, let's just talk about the features and then perhaps you can decide at the end of this video. So first up, the cameras. Just like the LG G4, the LG V10's cameras are simply amazing. Combine the brilliant onboard lenses with an awesome application like Snapseed, and you can get some truly remarkable results. And actually, for proof of that, let's pause this review for a second, and I'll show you guys a handful of photos that I recently took in New York City. So, what do you say? Are those photos not awesome? I mean, I had such a great time taking photos with the LG V10 in New York City. But check out Snapseed, guys. You need to check out Snapseed. It is an amazing photo editing application that's available on both Android and iOS. And yes, it is free. Now, to be honest, some people are not into HDR photography, but this past week I just had an amazing time experimenting with HDR in terms of Snapseed editing on the LG V10. It did not disappoint. I just got some beautiful photos and I'm very happy with the result. I know, I'm heavily focusing on the cameras of this phone, but you gotta understand, isn't it kind of ironic when we as consumers look at phones, the first feature we think about is the camera? Is that not the first thing that comes to mind? People are obsessed with cameras on their phones nowadays, and I don't blame them, especially with the LG V10's cameras. Okay, so one more thing I have to talk about in regards to cameras, and that's the dual front-facing cameras. These cameras are just perfect if you're looking for that wide-angle front-facing shot, which is actually excellent for the holidays if you're having any kind of Christmas party or holiday get-together. You can get everyone in the frame with no problem. Okay, so let's get away from cameras a bit. I've talked your ear off with that. Let's talk about the second feature that I think is most interesting, and that is the display. The 2560 by 1440 resolution is just downright beautiful. Not only can you experience extremely vibrant colors, but the blacks are so deep and so rich. I have always been fascinated with this aspect in regards to displays, and honestly the LG V10 does not disappoint. Alright, so moving on to battery life. How does a 3000 milliamp hour battery perform? Well, in my usage, it's been great. Now keep in mind, again, I'm not using the LG V10 as a phone. And while actually it was mostly in airplane mode last week while I was in New York City, which obviously helped on battery life a lot. But when I did have it on a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, battery life, it really wasn't that bad. Especially considering this secondary display right up here is always on. It never really affected my battery life, and that actually impressed me very much. And if for whatever reason battery life is not that great for your usage, don't forget you can always swap it out for another battery. That's what's so great about the LG phone lineup when compared to the recent phone lineup from Samsung and even the iPhone, which has never had swappable batteries. You can always swap out the battery if you feel the need to, and that's pretty cool. But in my usage, I never really needed to swap out my battery, so it was never really a problem. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about in regards to the LG V10 is Android. I actually am enjoying Android very much. I mean, it's very similar to what I'm already used to on the LG G4, but thanks to the secondary display, you have a few exclusive features here and there, such as the ability to view notifications at a glance. You can quickly turn on your flashlights, and well, you can customize your name at the very top. For instance, mine just says David the Franco right now, well, because that's my name. But if you want to do something special, saying like Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas, then well, you can do just that. I mean, I will be honest, the secondary display, in my opinion, is kind of gimmicky. It's not really something that's needed. But I will say this, it was pretty cool to see notifications appear at the top display rather than just on the primary display. But speaking in terms of Android in general, it was just an overall very positive experience. Not as consistent and fluid as iOS is, but still it's extremely customizable, which is something you do not get on iOS. And overall, it's just a very pleasant operating system to use, except for software buttons. I will be honest, I'm not a big fan of having software buttons. I still prefer a physical home button. That's just me. I mean, this is especially apparent when using an application like Instagram, when you have Instagram's icons on the bottom and then the Android software buttons under those buttons. Now in my usage, those buttons seem to clash a little much, especially for me. I'm a graphic designer, so I'm always paying attention to user interface and user experience. But of course, this is purely personal preference. Oh, and by the way, I will say it is very nice how Apple Music is available on Android. So even though I'm primarily an iOS user, that doesn't necessarily mean I have to abandon Apple 100% because, well, I can still use Apple Music on my LG V10. And that alone is pretty cool for me. So guys, there you have it. That is my review of the LG V10. Now let me just emphasize this one more time. There is still so much more to talk about. This phone is just packed with features, and I wish I could explain everything in detail, but I just can't. The video would literally be at least an hour long. So I wanted to explain my thoughts on the LG V10 from my own perspective. But you know what? Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this review. And of course, huge thanks to LG for making this video possible. Now, wrapping up this video, I do want to say one more thing. Is the LG V10 worth it? Well, if you have the LG G4, maybe not, because the V10 is not radically different. But if you're looking for slightly better cameras and the secondary display appeals to you, then yeah, perhaps the V10 is worth it. But guys, honestly, whether you go for the LG G4 or the LG V10, you're gonna get a kick-ass phone no matter what, and you will be happy with your decision. So guys, once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in my next video. Peace.